Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, May 8th, 2019 to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Mrs. Larson.
Yes. Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Ms. Evans.
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mr. Sprague.
Here.
The board is all in attendance.
Thank you. The meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For item 3, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is community comment. Do we have any community comment this evening? Is there any community comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5, consent agenda. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor of the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is school board announcements. Are there any announcements? I'd like to announce that Dr. Miller has assigned the board retreat dates. They've been set for Wednesday, June 12th and August 7th. And more information on that will come. And also remind the board that tomorrow night is the annual dedication dinner. It begins at 5:30 p.m. at Tuckaway. Okay. And then item 7, school board calendar. We have a regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular Board of Education meeting Wednesday, June 19th, 2019, here at the Education Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 8, reports, presentations, and other school board business. We have 8A, the tobacco poster winner presentation with Mrs. Larson and Dr. Miller.
Juliana, come up.
Yeah, you both go.
So, hello everyone. My name is Juliana Mansky, and I am a public health nurse for the City of Franklin's Health Department. And every year, for the past 23 years, to be precise, we host an annual 7th grade tobacco prevention poster contest. So this past January, I come to the 7th grade classrooms and I talk about different effects on tobacco and vaping and how that marketing really affects our teens and how these products can affect their bodies, so they can then in turn make informed decisions about potentially using or hopefully never using these products in the future. After that presentation, the students are then tasked with some counter marketing to actually create a poster that will be displayed at Showtime Movie Theater for the next school year to educate their peers about tobacco and vaping products. We know through research that peer-to-peer education is really the most powerful. So by the students using their creativity and their minds and their really strong messages, we're able to keep vaping and tobacco rates extremely low in the city of Franklin, which is really wonderful. Funding for this program is paid by the tobacco retailers in Franklin. So the license that they pay to the city, we in turn give back to the students 100% through this tobacco prevention poster contest. So we're very fortunate to have this opportunity in partnership with the city and the school system to be able to utilize that funding in a very positive way. So about 250 posters were submitted from the 7th grade students this year. 9 of them were chosen to be a poster displayed at Showtime Movie Theater. So they're like the typical movie poster, which is very, very large. So 9 of those were chosen to be displayed the next 9 months at Showtime Movie Theater in Franklin here. And then very special this year, because there was so much great artwork, we did something we've never done before, and we actually chose 4 additional posters to be displayed as social media ads. So we'll be displaying those people think that because Wisconsin has smoke-free workplace laws and the city of Franklin has vape-free workplace laws, that tobacco is not a problem. But unfortunately, these companies that own tobacco and vaping companies have billions and billions of dollars to advertise to our teens and young adults. And so we do need to still keep doing prevention efforts to reinforce that message that these products are unhealthy and not cool to use. And I'm excited to have this poster contest as one of those ways to utilize prevention funds. So I think those are the main points that I wanted to cover. So without further ado, I will call up each student one by one, and then Ms. Miller will, I believe, hand the certificate and shake their hands, along with Ms. Larson. And then I'll hold the poster up initially, and then when the student comes up, gets their hand shaken, if you could just walk around to show the rest of the school board what your artwork looks like, and then you can go back and have a seat.
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, okay. So, yes, perfect. So before you go to your seat, head over there and get a group shot. I love that. Yes. Surprisingly. All right, so our first winner up, so the first 9 people will be the posters displayed at Showtime Movie Theater. And this first person, whose poster will be displayed in June, so just a couple weeks from now, is Madison Trinko.
All right, and then you can walk down and show our board members. Thank you. Congratulations.
All right, so our next winner up is Megan Graham-Blicka. Megan's poster will be displayed in July. Nice work.
Of course, I picked all the winners. The titles.
She's not doing it. Wow.
All right, next we have Madison Gurkowski. Madison's poster will be displayed in August of this year. All right, next up we have Nadine Asha. And Nadine's poster will be displayed in September. Very good. All right, next we have Grace Wood.
It's very nice.
Grace's poster will be displayed in October. The next poster we have is from a student that was unsure if they were going to be able to come today or not due to
Nice
another
job.
commitment, and that winner is Sam Poole. So this is what Sam's poster looks like. Very good. These students they have so much going on. Next up, poster to be displayed in December this year is from Ella Michalik. extra year.
Thank you, Ms. Mansky. So we'll take a photo moment over there, and then if you don't want to stay for the whole meeting, feel free to excuse yourselves. So, our next item is item 8B, the Ben Franklin presentation with Ms. Edbauer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Drew.
Welcome.
Do you guys, can you hear us okay? Or do you need to hold the microphone?
If you just tilt them up a little bit towards their face, then.
Okay, because it's so sweet. All right, so, hi everyone, I'm Sarah Edbauer, the principal of Ben Franklin. You stand, my friend. And these are my sixth graders and one of my sixth grade teachers, Brandon Dennick. We're here to talk to you guys today about personal growth. I'm going to do the awkward spin thing. You know, I'm supposed to be addressing the board, but there's an audience too. So I remember doing this last year and thinking it was awkwardish. Okay, so we're going to talk about personal growth, and personal growth specifically in relation to developing community circles throughout our school this year. So one thing that my staff identified as something that we wanted to work hard on was working on better boosting kids' social and emotional learning. And one way that we've done this as a staff and grown together is through implementing community circles in each of our classrooms. So my sixth grade friends here are going to talk about their personal growth. Ms. Nennick's going to talk about how implementing circles has changed her personal growth, or how has influenced her personal growth and teaching practice. And then we're going to invite the school board to do a community circle with us. It's going to be beautiful. This is an example and kind of a little bit of a preview of Mr. Cohn's report, because I know that they're, Mr. Buckler and Mrs. Reed, I know they're going to talk about social and emotional learning and the community work this year. This is a pretty great example of an opening or welcoming ritual to kind of help engage kids in their day, to build that plate that really talks about like being ready to learn. Like, what does it mean to be socially and emotionally ready to learn so that you can take in those academic pieces throughout your day and really get your best learning done. Okay, so Ms. Nennick, why don't you go ahead and take it away, and then I've got three of my friends, they'll introduce themselves, and then we'll do a circle or a model for you guys.
As Sarah was saying, this personal journey began last year. For me, it began in our meeting for my SLO. My SLO last year was around classroom management, so I focused specifically on different expectations that I wanted to put in the classroom. But as I was talking with Sarah, we had a great conversation and said, you know what, this went really well, but I want to continue this journey. I want to do more community building. I wanted to have a stronger just classroom overall once we got the procedures in place. So over the summer, Sarah gave me a couple books to look at. One was Morning Meetings and the other Rules in the Classroom, all responsive teaching practices. And it completely changed the way I viewed my classroom management strategies, me as a teacher, and my students. It was amazing. It went from it was focusing on that community building, because so often we get sucked into what do we have to teach, we have to get through the curriculum. So putting that at the forefront of my mind, but it also totally transformed just how I approach the community as far as classroom management. Instead of going more of a disciplinary approach, it completely transformed it into a more proactive strategy so that we could build that community together, so that when we solved problems, we were able to fix it as a community. So we implemented that this year. We do 3 different types of circles in the classroom. The first one is the morning meeting, like Sarah was talking about. We try and do that about 3 times a week, and I would say that's my kid's favorite. This one is just purely community building, getting to know each other on different levels, and just kind of taking the stress away from the school day and getting ourselves ready to learn. We've also done some circles with our school psych around different social, emotional strategies that they can learn. So we, as a class, decided one of the things that we need to work on is gossiping and stopping gossip, which is pretty popular in 6th grade. So we talked through different strategies for how to deal with that. in a circle. And then finally, our last circle was really focused on restorative practices. So if we have an issue come up in the community that we need to solve as a class, we sit down in our circle and we talk through that and come up with different strategies. We've used it for those unfortunate situations, but we've also used it to come up with class goals. We've done brainstorming sessions. A recent one was, what do we want to do to celebrate the end of the year? And they all brainstormed some great ideas. So we've used it in a lot of different ways. I absolutely love it. I feel like I know my kids so much more than I have in previous years, which has been great. I feel like I'm a better teacher. I'm more patient and willing to work with the kids. But the kids also have so much more responsibility in the classroom. They're taking on different roles, and they also get to know each other and have kind of a break from the school day, which is so awesome. We get to see a different side of each other, which is just so important to the classroom. So.
What I personally like about circles is we're able to learn different aspects of. I'm Brody, and I like learning different aspects of my friends and my student and my peers that I've never learned before.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie, and my favorite part of circles is learning things about my friends and them talking about themselves, which they wouldn't really be comfortable in, but in a whole group, and how it's nice to just get things off your chest, but not be pressured to.
My name is Jesse Kelly, and I feel circles help me with like being more comfortable with talking to my friends and like and meeting new people.
So my friends didn't introduce themselves. I want you to introduce yourself really quick, and then school board members, admin, other friends perhaps, come and join us in the circle.
Hi, my name is Ben.
Ben?
My name is Faison.
I'm Riley. And I'm Nora.
Please join us.
School board members, go in a circle.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead and make a circle. Yeah, we'll just make it right around here. We're gonna stand.
Yeah. Stand awkwardly in the middle, maybe?
You did too, right?
Okay. So we are going to begin our circle by introducing yourself. So you're going to shake the hand of the person on your right and left, introduce your name, and then we'll come back. So right and left. Ready?
I'm Mackenzie. Nice to meet you.
Okay. So first thing we're going to do is just share out to the person that you just greeted on your right and left. Share out one interesting thing about yourself that no one else knows. Okay, so you guys can just do that right now. So right and left, go ahead and do that. All right. Now we are going to do a full group circle. So we have our talking piece, which we're going to pass from person to person. So you're not allowed to talk unless you have our talking piece. And our question for today is, if you could meet one celebrity, doesn't matter what kind of celebrity, one celebrity, who would you want to meet and why? So mine, since I'm dressed in Bucks and going to the Bucks game next, I would say Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because his story is amazing, where he came from, and he's such a hard worker, and he seems really down to earth.
I think mine is very silent education hero. Ken Robinson, I saw him speak a couple of years ago. I think this is really great TED Talk about the education system and things we can do to make it better.
Mine's aviation nurse now. Former Olympic life would be Sean Tucker, because of the cool things he can make an airplane do in the sky.
I'd like to meet those guys because they're like
I'll say Sandra Bullock. I think she's really talented. Seems like a really nice person.
I would choose
would choose my grandma because I never got to meet her.
Mickey Mouse to figure out how he gets his voice so high. I would probably be Taylor because he's such a great concert player.
Okay, I'll go Walt Disney.
I would choose Jack Nicklaus. I'd love to have dinner with him and just talk golf. Table for three, because I'll.
I would have liked to have met Jackie Kennedy Onassis because she had to keep so much of her life secret, and I just think she would have been an interesting person to talk to.
I think I would have wanted to meet like Amelia Earhart or something like that because it's kind of cool her story and like how she went missing and stuff.
I would meet like any famous volleyball player around our world.
Okay, we're gonna do a quick game. So we start with greeting, then we do a share, and then we do some kind of group activity. It's either related to building community or teamwork. Otherwise, it's to get their brains moving. So we're gonna do a brain moving one today. We made up a name for it. I forget what it is. But it's a counting game. So I'm gonna start, and we're gonna go around, and you're gonna count in order. So it'd be 1, 2, 3. The trick is though, is that there's a rule. 7 and 14 are switched. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not 7, 14, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 7, and we'll go to 15. Okay, so the goal is to get all the way around without missing out. To 15. All right, I'll start. 1, 2,
3,
4, 5, 6,
14,
8, 9,
10.
11, 12.
13,
7.
15.
Yay! Okay, so now Mackenzie gets to make up another rule to add.
So on 2, you have to move.
1,
Move.
3,
4,
5, 6, 14.
8,
9, 10, 11.
Move. You get the 2 in there?
No, it was actually just on 2. I know she tricked you. So now we get to start over. Yep.
She is, she moved.
Oh, 3.
6.
14.
8,
9, 10,
11,
12,
7,
15.
16.
Well, now we're done. Woo! And then we would keep going and adding on. Out there. But thank you guys for participating in our circle. We appreciate it. Thank you guys.
You went on 12. It was like there was a 2 in it. Ah, I was too single-minded.
Thank you, Ben Franklin. That was hard.
Right?
Item 8C is our social emotional learning report. Mr. Cohen,
Good evening.
good evening. You have
That
to
was-
top that.
I know. I don't think we'll come close, but we'll talk a little bit about it. I'll be joined this evening by a few of my colleagues. So Amy Ost, who is a school counselor at the high school, Catherine Reed, who is our school counseling system specialist, and Jamie Feckler, our principal at Pleasant View Elementary. And so I would invite them up to the mics as well. We are thrilled to be here tonight to share with you some of the work that's occurred really over the better part of the last 2 years, but some more concentrated and intentional work this year around drafting a social and emotional learning plan for the district. I think our friends from Ben Franklin did a great job segueing to us and demonstrating the power of community and building community through some consistent and intentional approaches to developing the social and emotional learning needs and skills of our students. I'd like to just take a moment to point you to some documents that are in board docs, as we'll be referencing them a couple times this evening. There were 3 that were posted. One was just a memo highlighting tonight's presentation, what we were going to talk about. The second was a program guide that was developed by the committee to help explain and highlight the why of the work around social emotional learning. Why was it important? Why is it something that we felt the need to put into the coherence plan. And then finally, a shortened plan at a glance that highlights not only the strategic actions we engaged in this year, but our intended actions for the next 2 years around social emotional learning in the district. And so that work really, under the leadership of the 3 individuals you see at the table there, began in September with a group of about 30 across the district representing multiple employee groups. And those individuals signed up with the intent to really help us create that plan together. And so we met several times throughout the year to collaborate and engage in some learning as well as some conversation about where do we want to go around this work and what do we hope to achieve in engaging in it. And that work was also then spread across 3 different smaller task forces that honed into some specific areas of the plan, worked to develop those areas, and then brought that work back to the broader committee for feedback and input. And so there was a lengthy process, a deliberate process, and a lot of voices in the documents and the work that you see in front of you. And just to kind of reground us, I think we started with the goal of talking about how does a well-developed social emotional learning plan benefit our students in our district. And as we review the research around social emotional learning, 3 things really stand out, and you'll hear Ms. Reed talk a little bit more about this tonight. Those districts and those classrooms that have a really intentional approach to social emotional learning demonstrate better academic performance, improve student attitudes and behaviors, and reduced emotional distress. And all of that leads to more productive classrooms, more safe learning environments, and better outcomes for kids. And so tonight, you've had hopefully an opportunity to read elements of that comprehensive plan. We're just going to highlight some key pieces that we feel like need some additional context to help you understand the work and where we're going. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues to begin.
So we're also going to engage in another welcoming ritual. If you can bear with us, we'd like you to participate in another example of how we can embed social emotional learning along with academic learning. So you have, I'd like to have, if you can hear my voice, I'll just speak without a microphone. I'd like you to take 3 Post-it notes and referring to the documents that you receive, take a minute to jot down one idea on each of 3 Post-it notes. One main idea that you took away from the reading. Something that you found particularly interesting and notable, something that you're really curious about and you want to learn more about from the materials that you received. Now, this is not just to check to make sure that you did your reading. It's really to help you come to a point where you have some specific interest of your own that you will have a voice with. In a few minutes, after you jot down your ideas, I will ask you to stand and talk about those ideas with another person. So that's the point. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to jot down 3 main takeaways from the social emotional learning program and plan at a glance. about another minute.
If you haven't completed all three, that is okay. We all process and work at different pace, and we weren't expecting to do this activity. So I appreciate your efforts. So this activity is called Give One, Get One, Move On. And it's a way for us to engage students in some prior reading or learning and also have them talk to each other. So my directions to the students for you right now is in a moment I'll ask you to stand as you're able and find another member of the board to share your ideas with. So I want you to actually give your idea to the other person and explain, this is what I came away with, this is what was interesting to me, here's why I selected this aspect of the plan, and then you're going to get one from your partner as well. And then I'll give you each about 30 seconds to do that, and then we'll move on, and you'll rotate to someone else and do the same thing. By the end of the event, you'll have 2 different ideas or 3 different ideas that you're coming away with, and hopefully you'll learn what is important to your peers, and you'll have an opportunity to express what's important to you and what you're taking away from this. So if you're ready, I'll ask you to stand and find a partner to talk with, and give one and get one.
Just one per partner. Yeah.
All right, if you're ready, in about 5 seconds, we will switch to find another partner. So it's time to move on. All right, if you can move on to a different partner now, and give one and get one. conversation, and sometimes that's an important piece for our students to have opportunities to talk to each other, even though it's academic language, it's academic content that they're engaging in, it's a way for them to connect, and it's an important piece for us as we approach social and emotional learning and try to understand what that really means for students. It really is multiple things, and as you would probably have seen from your work, your reading of the materials that we've prepared,
that social emotional learning is important for academic learning in a lot of ways. Our purpose in developing a plan to meet the needs of students beyond their academic needs incorporates social and emotional learning activities and strategies to help build a classroom and a culture and an environment where students feel safe and comfortable being themselves, sharing their ideas, and learning together, as well as developing the skills that they need when they leave us and go out into higher education or into the workplace. What we've done is look at our own data to identify that we have some needs in our students. Our data shows through Youth Risk Behavior Survey, Gallup information, staff reports, our knowledge of trauma for students, that our students have social and emotional learning needs that are part of what they need in order to be able to be ready to learn and ready to leave us. So what we've done as part of this work is approach it from the point of view of looking for thought leaders across the nation. And you will have seen some references to CASEL. CASEL is an organization that provides guidance for school districts across the country in developing a program that will allow for a comprehensive social and emotional learning program. So those researchers are helping us to understand that academic learning is social and emotional in its basis. So they promote practices and policies that we can model our own program after. And that model is really a systemic approach to building skills in students across multiple domains. Those domains are school districts, school buildings, classrooms, and in our homes and communities. We can follow the model that CASEL has promoted, where there are actions and practices that we can promote within each of those domains that cultivate social and emotional learning for students and staff. CASEL has synthesized the skills that students need into 5 core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. We've then taken those 5 core competencies and aligned them with the state social and emotional learning competencies, the ASCA National Mindsets and Behaviors, and the Department of Workforce Development's employability skills, so that we know that our students can be life-ready, college-ready, career-ready as a result of a holistic approach to teaching students. Those skills and mindsets that we want for our students contribute to the safe and welcoming classrooms, and therefore a better environment for students for learning and a better place for our staff to work as well. We didn't do this in isolation as a core group. As Mr. Cohn mentioned, we had a team, and part of that work was identifying what is our vision for this, and Amy Ost is going to talk about that.
Thanks. So as Mr. Cohn mentioned, our larger district social emotional learning team, or SEL team, was about 30 staff members, representative of all different levels, K through 12, in addition to administrators and directors, people from the ECC here, coordinators. We tried to get a representative group as part of our larger team. We also had student services personnel, obviously counselors, psychologists, a lot of representatives. One of our initial steps was to break out into smaller task forces, and one of those was a group of team members who took on the responsibility and setting forth our mission to make sure that our work was not only aligned with our goals as an SEL team, but also aligned with our goals as a district and our vision as a district, to make sure we're all in this together and kind of cohesive in that way. So we took a look at our SEL guidebook, which some of you have seen as well, background information that we had to date. We carefully read through our district core values and beliefs and what we really represent, what we want our team to represent, and what we want to put forth to our students. And we gleaned what specific items specifically, especially align with our vision for SEL as a district. So we had a really excellent, positive, and productive discussion with the task force, and we formulated and shared the vision of social emotional learning in Franklin Public Schools to give us a focus around which we will center our work for the coming years. So our vision statement is equipping all students with social and emotional skills mindsets and attitudes to achieve holistic well-being within school, home, and community. So this is kind of our starting point and our center focus around the work that we're going to be doing. And Mr. Cohn is now going to share some of the key areas of SEL that will help us in our work around that vision.
Yeah, so as a team, obviously we needed to ground in research and learning, and so we did that. You heard Ms. Reed talk about CASEL and some of the work associated with that piece. And then we had a guiding mission and vision that was aligned to the coherence plan. And then from there, we set about the task of completing the plan, right? And so the plan, as you've noticed, the plan at a glance document highlights 4 key areas. And so we're going to spend just a minute or two on each, kind of highlighting some of the key pieces. Those 4 areas were universal instruction, cultivating adult SEL, the continuum of supports for mental health, and establishing and cultivating community partnerships. And so Mr. Feckler is going to walk you through the first of those, universal instruction.
So Catherine and I had an opportunity to lead a smaller task force with universal instruction in mind. And we had teachers, support staff, other administrators that made up this group. And we did some initial researching and planning work, and also to get feedback from people, like what's worked well over the past number of years that you've been in the classroom and in your schools, and what do we need to improve on or grow in. And so using that research, using some research as a foundation, it was helpful in us being able to look at 4K through 12, now that we're adding 4K, looking at what students need at each of those levels throughout the course of their time here in Franklin Public Schools. So we've identified some universal classroom and teaching practices for teachers, some basic practices that going into year 1 that everyone can implement and use. You had an opportunity to engage in that welcoming ritual. There's also engaging practices that would happen during the middle of a lesson or a class, and then also optimistic closure at the end. So what's that wrap up for students? And there are different ways that you can do that with your peers, with teachers, with people who are around you, so that you're engaged. When we talk about student engagement, this is a huge focus on how we engage our students actively within a class, not just academically, but we talk about that social emotional piece, and it's hard to have an academic connection if you don't have the social and emotional connection as well. So we have an opportunity now next year to focus on some of those basic practices in our classrooms. And then the following year, we're going to look at more specific instruction that we would identify for different grade levels of kids, more explicit instruction based on the needs across our schools. And they may look different. It's going to look different. We have different needs at Pleasant View than we have at Ben Franklin, than has from the middle school or the high school. And so we have an opportunity here to hear from our kids, to hear from our staff, to hear from our parents, to figure out what is the best approach for that when we start to select curriculum. I also want to identify just one other thing. We didn't have students in that initial task force, but we're actually working on getting their voice through a student focus group this month. Actually, next week, Catherine and I will be going to elementary, middle, and high school level to talk to kids about their experiences for teachers who've tried some of these practices out in their classroom. So we want to hear from kids, and we want to use that, again, to bolster the start of next year. So we have a lot of work to come, but we're taking some great first steps in identifying lessons and things that will work for our students moving forward with social emotional learning. I'm going to pass things off to Amy now for adult SEL.
So we've talked a lot about our students, which are obviously the focus of everything that we do. But in doing our research and making sure that we're implementing a comprehensive SEL program, CASEL does talk about the crucial step of adult SEL, or adult social emotional learning. You know, it's our goal as a district to make Franklin Public Schools a better place to work. So this is one way that we can do that. We thought really carefully about our staff, from teachers to administrators, student services, all the way to custodians, support staff, food service personnel, everyone else who's a really important part of our district and makes our district great. And they are all just as important as we look at this work. So we want to make sure that we, in addition to what CASEL is telling us, that we are also building capacity for our staff to engage in and model social and emotional skills, and to also have opportunities to collaborate on strategies for promoting SEL and making sure that we're all comfortable with this and we're being the best that we can be as well. Thankfully, our district already has an established wellness committee under the direction of Ms. Ellihausen, and we were able to connect with that committee and collaborate to hopefully include some key SEL pieces into what they've already been working on. They are doing awesome work. So what's been established, the goals they have for future wellness opportunities for all staff, as I mentioned, the whole range, beginning already next school year. And we're kind of in the first stages of this as well in our collaboration. So we're figuring out how that might look and how we can work together with that. This might include opportunities for staff to learn about and practice strategies to address stress, be prepared for the demands of work, working with students, things like that, and how we can incorporate this into our work every day with kids. So Mr. Cohn is going to speak to an important aspect now, another piece of our social and emotional learning plan, which is mental health.
So I think in an ideal state, all of our instruction around social emotional learning, so those 3 signature practices that you heard Mr. Feckler talk about, right, welcoming ritual, engaging pedagogy, and then optimistic closure, paired with some explicit instruction would be enough to meet the needs of our learners. But we know that there are students who are suffering from mental illness or in need of additional support beyond some of that initial and foundational learning. And so we felt it was extremely important as a team to address mental health as a part of the planning efforts. And so you're actually going to see 2 areas of the plan that both specifically address mental health needs. The first one is really to create and articulate a continuum of supports for mental health. And in the program guide on page 11, you'll see a pyramid that articulates our levels of support from those supports that we're providing all of our students around mental health to those students who maybe need a little bit more intensive support, right? Those selected supports for some students, all the way then up to intensive supports for few students who really need to engage in some form of treatment and ongoing mental health support from a licensed therapist or provider. And so we start at that foundational level and work our way up. And so there was a mental health task force that paired with all of our student services personnel, so all of our school psychologists, school social workers, and school counselors, and we came together and collaborated around what are we already doing at that universal level, at that more intensive level, and how are we going to build some additional consistency based on that across the district. And so this pyramid and what you see in terms of that scaffolding was a result of their work coming together and saying, well, this is what we're doing at Bed Franklin. What are you doing at Countrydale? What are you doing at the middle school? And starting to bring some consistency to that work to say, all right, we're all going to engage in this work to support students in this way. And so that again, that pyramid is a result of that and kind of showing you that trajectory. It also helps us when we're communicating with students and families to be able to say, these are the supports you can expect, and this is what we're going to provide based on your needs. You're going to note then kind of the second half of our work relates to that intensive support level. We can't do this work without community engagement and community partnerships. You think about the value that the Ed for Employment Plan and all of our work with our community partners through the Saber Business Alliance have brought to the academic side of our work. Those partnerships equally can bring that same benefit to the mental health side of our work. If we have students who are not attending school or have difficulty with anxiety or are struggling to stay focused in the classroom, and we're providing supports in the school environment, if we're partnering with strong community partners who can provide additional support that we can't provide, now we're holistically addressing the needs of that child and giving them the best chance of success in our schools. And so we set forth on the task of identifying some of those community partners and who they might be. And more specifically, we started investigating the possibility of an on-site clinic here in Franklin with a licensed therapist who could provide some of those direct services to our students. I just want to point out as we talk about an on-site clinic and provider that the type of license that those individuals have differ from educational licenses. Those are licenses to develop therapy in a clinical setting. They're not licenses like our school psychologists or our social workers have to deliver services and support in the school environment, which is an educational license. And so that's the difference in terms of why we might need some different support there in terms of the work that we're doing. There are models for this. Luckily, around the state, there are a number of districts who are engaging with on-site mental health clinics. And so we've had the opportunity to engage with them around how that's working, what that might look like, how they started out. And we were able to incorporate all of that collective knowledge and wisdom into our work. And throughout February and March, I had the opportunity then to contact all of the potential area clinics who might be interested in supporting us. And so I made personal contact with all of them and had conversations about, here's what we think we may be looking for. Are you interested in potentially partnering with us? And that included everyone from the children's hospitals and the Auroras of the world to small locally owned clinics that have independent clinicians. So we really were inclusive in our approach, but we wanted to pick some regional partners where they, are within driving distance and accessible to our families in case there was some additional needs beyond what they could provide in the school setting. So from there, we put out a request for proposal, again, modeling what some other school districts had done, but making sure it addressed our needs here. And we received back 3 formal proposals within that. We're still in that process of reviewing those. What I can say is they're being reviewed by a team of administrators and Ms. Reed. Our entire student services staff has had an opportunity to take a look at those proposals, and then our mental health task force has reviewed them. From there, Ms. Cody, Christine Cody, and I have had the opportunity to reach out further and have face-to-face meetings with those potential partners and get some additional answers to some questions that those teams had. And then also we had an opportunity to call and make some reference checks on school districts that they're currently working with to see how those partnerships are evolving. And so we're continuing to gather that data throughout May with the goal of going back to our internal teams to say, here's what we learned, here's some additional information, and then by the end of May, we're hoping to make a final decision and make a recommendation in terms of where we might go around that work. And so that's kind of been the work from the mental health side. I'm incredibly proud of the team, and actually these 3 individuals' leadership has been essential in all of the work that we've done. It wouldn't have been possible without that collaborative team of 30 and these 3 individuals working diligently every day with collaborative groups to draw out needs and make sure that we were being really inclusive in our approach to gathering feedback and making sure we were being intentional in our work, in our approach. So it's been a great process. And again, with that, I think we'll open things up to questions if there are things that you want to know more about.
So the pyramid that you have there, what kind of numbers are you thinking fall into like the top tier? And how would that look across the grade levels?
Sure. So I'll speak to what we included in the RFP, the request for proposal around the mental health provider, and then perhaps Ms. Reed and Ms. Ost can speak a little bit to maybe that second tier. But that most intensive support level, we were estimating in the neighborhood of 1% to 2% of the student body. So we have approximately 4,500 students, so spread kind of equally across. About 1% to 2% is what we estimated when we worked with our partners.
As for that center level, tier 2 level, it's typically or traditionally between 10 to 15 or 20% of the student population that would need additional supports along the needs for mental health or mental wellness types of needs. We try to meet the general needs of all students with a universal approach through a multitude of opportunities like the social emotional learning programming that we're talking about, and additional instruction that students need. And then those students who need more might be referred to us. We might find out about their needs through looking at precipitous grade drops, health room visits, absences, tardiness, self-referral, parent referral, concerns from teachers, et cetera, to understand what those needs are. But those are typically about 15% of the students, and we would apply social and emotional and mental health interventions, small group interventions, individual counseling by counselors, school psychologists, social workers, and other ways of supporting them.
I would add that the 1% to 2% was based on what we're currently referring out for. So as we talk to our school psychs, that was the percentage that we're currently referring to outside clinicians now.
And my understanding that this is not necessarily, different. I mean, these sports are already out there. We have counselors, we have all these things going on, but you're just being more intentional and focused. Is that the difference?
Yeah, I think we're trying to bring some consistency, right? We have multiple sites, right, and a lot of different approaches, all of which are research-based, but we wanted to have some intentional conversation about how do we bring some consistent process to what we're doing so that the types of approaches that we're engaging in Robinwood look very similar to what we're doing in Countrydale. So that was really the intention. And we don't have it articulated anywhere, right? So when we're working with families right now, though we're able to recite those things, we don't have any kind of way of communicating clearly with families about what that progression is.
I think I can add, too, that it's bringing some cohesion and collaboration in our own teams because we're having additional conversations now about what are you doing at Robinwood, what are you doing at Countrydale, how can we partner, how can we share resources so that, the process that we're engaged in is really pushing our teams in a positive way.
Is the guide for parents then, or not? Or who's the guide for?
the guide is for us internally to be able to have dialogue about the why and establishing some communication around the programming. So as we think about next year, one of the core strategies in the coherence plan is about kind of engaging in this plan and then implementing it. As we look to further engage our staff across the district next year, it'll be helpful for our leaders to have some reference point to go back to say, here's the research that we're grounded in, here's the why, here are the things that we're working on. So it was really to articulate the programming for us so that we're able to draw back on that and have a common space for developing understanding.
How is this being communicated to the parents?
So the totality of it, I think we have to take a variety of approaches to communication. I think if we do move forward with an on-site clinic, there'll be a communication plan around that, right, and how we'll communicate that out. More broadly, I think we, throughout next year, will have a number of communications for parents regarding, social emotional learning is an important focus of the coherence plan. Here are the ways we're going to engage in that. Please talk with your son and daughter. You might notice they're engaging in welcoming rituals that look like this. And those are the kinds of things that we'll communicate through our normal communication channels to families.
I asked you several questions ahead of time in the meeting, but I have one more. But first I want to say this is a very thorough report, and you've done a lot of work. From your summary in here, you can tell you've done quite a bit of work. But on the last 2 pages, where you talk about hope and engagement, and hope and engagement are defined for the Gallup poll. And I'm wondering if for the other survey that's done, if we define bullying to the students at all, because so many students say that they're bullied, and we even had to change our definition of bullying in our policy. So it's a hard term to identify, bullying, for parents and students. So when they answer that question, am I bullied? Is it identified on the survey? Or is it just their interpretation of what bullying is?
I think the bullying questions that are on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey are identified. I don't know if they are exactly matching our definition, and it's something that we, in our own universal instruction with students, are continually working with students to correct misperceptions around bullying, because there are lots of them. People feel that conflict is often bullying, and things like that. So we're in many conversations throughout the day working through those things, and then in our instruction and continually trying to put that definition out, like you said, so that people really know what it is and they can say whether they've experienced it or not. So to your point, there could be some clouding of the data if students are not aware of the appropriate definition.
Well, and then whether it's bullying or conflict, we're helping to teach them how to deal with conflict every day. Okay, thank you.
Just one other follow-up. I know the last page also mentions trauma and the whole trauma-based, adverse child experience. It's kind of a, I want to say trendy thing, but I think it's something we learned, how it impacts kids and how it can be lifelong. How does that concept, though, fit into, because you seem to have social emotional learning and you have mental health, and then you have this trauma thing, what, interwoven in here, or how does that fit in?
Go ahead, yeah.
I can attempt to get at some of your question. I think when we think about a student who has experienced an adverse childhood condition, often the way that they perceive the environment might be altered to the point where I see someone say something, or I hear someone say something to me, I'm interpreting that from a different frame of reference, as a threat, or as something that might be hurtful toward me, when it wasn't intended to be that way. So our knowledge as educators that students come to us with this frame or these lenses is really helpful for us to understand and interpret their behavior correctly and help them move past that behavior. So it's something where we really do need to have an awareness of how trauma impacts students' functioning and behavior in the classroom, and then alongside that, helping students to learn different behaviors, different responses, to understand where their own thinking and behaving is coming from so that they have a more effective and functional way of being in the classroom.
Is that going to be part of your curriculum, or, because I don't see it really named in any of your stuff in front of here?
We do have it as part of our plan to continue to deepen the work around trauma-based practices in schools across the district. We've had 1 year of some initial training with staff, about 3 hours for all staff, but we plan to find and discover ways to deepen that understanding and help people see how that applies within a social emotional learning context.
Is that coming from the state level also? I mean, trauma, I know it's on the human services side, but now it seems to be coming to this educational area of.
Yeah, I would say there is a lot of talk about how trauma affects students every day, and that it's something that as our awareness grows, we have the ability to impact students in a different way and help to prevent further problems. So it's a really important piece for us.
One of the ways it's become a part of what's happening in schools in Wisconsin is through the safety Department of Justice and requirements around ensuring safety in schools. And as part of our grant, it was required that our teachers get involved in 3 hours of trauma training. So that piece was coming through that lens, if you will. So that is, but it's incredibly important to this work.
Any other questions?
So you have the plan and then you'll come back once a year, or how does this?
I think we're happy to come back as often as we need to provide you an update on how things are going, so.
I would like to thank Mr. Cohen and this team. You know, as a superintendent in this district, this is major work for us that's incredibly important to our students. So thank you very much.
John. Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
And item 8D is international trips. These are action items. Mr. Bolo.
Thanks. I will speak to any general questions, kind of, from the building lens. However, if there's specific questions around the trip, I'm going to invite up the teachers who are here in attendance today, Mrs. Kenya and Bennett, and Ms. Ressler and Ms. Whittier. So
You're welcome to come up.
I will grab another chair, or two. If you want to grab one.
Hi there. And we usually approve these separately.
Okay. One at a time, or what do you mean?
Yeah. So we'll go to our Durban trip first. Mr. Bennett, hi.
German trip first, okay. Rather than go through the whole thing, which you have, I think I preferred highlighting some differences. So for example, I think the major difference that the German trip has with the other ones is that it involves a homestay. It is an exchange program, and we're going to be hosting German students this coming fall. And once that is completed, then I start talking about the return trip to Germany. And the return trip then would involve approximately 3 weeks. And within those 3 weeks, there are 2 weeks of mandated visitation of the German high school. It's all part, like I said, of a partially funded, actually, by the German government too. So that's part of what they need to do. Just as when they are here, they need to attend our high school. Other than that, I'm not sure how many other things are that much different than the other trips. I have appended 2 possible proposals. What we end up doing is entirely up to the students and the parents. It could involve no traveling whatsoever and just a homestay. But most often, students and parents decide that they would like to travel a little bit. And I have 2 possible proposals, but we could do one of those proposals, could do neither one of them, or we could do something entirely different. It really doesn't start gelling until after the hosting happens. And I try to stress to the people engaged or involved in it that these are 2 separate things. First, they need to host, and then once they host, once we're done with that, then we really start talking about our return trip. So that would be happening in the fall then.
So the last time you went was 2 years ago, correct?
We did not go because there was very little student interest at that time. Some of them did go on their own. I believe possibly 5 went on their own for various days, so I was not involved. Initially, I was involved, but once it got to the point where there were so few that were really interested in going, and the cost became prohibitive, I just said, you know, if you want to go, go on your own, but it won't be through the school.
And that's why I'm asking, only because of the price difference in here. You know, it goes up to $4,000, and I know that depends on how many students go.
Depends how many students go, and if you look at the proposals that I have appended to it, that actually came out to, I think the highest one was 3,700. And again, that would depends on how many go and whether there are more chaperones and things like that, yeah.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2020 trip to Germany. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, and second by
Second.
Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. It sounds like you have a difficult time.
Wiedersehen,
Wiedersehen.
I took German in high school, so.
Very good. Okay, the next one we have on our agenda is Mr. Kenya, the trip to Japan.
Okay, I guess on the same thing, the differences would be that I do this purely through myself. I mean, I don't use a group to organize the trip, and I do that to try and keep the costs down. Looking at the lists for this year, if we went through a company, it would be about $3,500 to $4,200. So by doing it ourselves, we can keep it, you know, in something that's an affordable range for most of the students. The biggest difference this year would be there's not going to be a homestay. We've ended our sister-school relationship. The problem was simply that they needed to come here every year with 20 students, and it's hard to find 20 homestays year after year after year. We ended up with the same families, and we at some point we had 4 in one home. It just, I don't think it was working. So at the moment, we don't have a homestay, so that'll shorten the trip a little bit. That actually will save us some money because we won't need a 2-week rail pass. We'll just get a 1-week rail pass. The biggest concerns I have, you know, for money is that 2020 is going to be the Tokyo Olympics coming. I don't know how that's going to impact the airfares, the hotels. It'll be a couple months before the Olympics happen, but nonetheless, you know, I'm a little concerned about how that's going to happen. And the only other really, you know, important, you know, consideration on prices, if fuel keeps going up, then they'll probably start bringing in fuel surcharges again, and that can be a few hundred extra dollars. So that'd be my only other big concern. I guess as I look at the other things on the trip, the only other thing I'd mention is there definitely will be a second chaperone. You know, and I guess that's all I have.
If we do this on our own versus going through an agency of some kind, are there any insurance questions? I mean, liability insurance or anything like that, since this really is a Franklin-sponsored trip?
I mean, we have a number of forms that are district required as far as what they'll do, what they won't do. There is about a medical on that. One of the requirements is that all students have to have, you know, independent health insurance.
Is this something we might have?
Have an emergency form on that.
Is this something we might have our legal people just take a quick?
I think we could check with our insurance folks on that.
Going through a travel agency would be different than if we did it on our own. I think we might want to look at that.
How many years have you done this, Mr. Kenya?
This will be 24 years.
Yeah.
Really?
And I'm
I'm quite certain even if, the trip were through an agency and something happened, we'd still be sued, so.
Oh, you can sue anybody, anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna
I
assume
will
we
say
have
this,
coverage.
we'll only go on flag carriers and that type of thing.
No, I'm,
No, but,
with the litigious society,
Sure,
I'm just, are we protected, is all I'm saying.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2020 trip to Japan. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Was that a motion by Mr. Sprague? Yes. Yes, okay. A second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I think is it sayonara? Is that?
That works, sure.
Sure.
Means goodbye.
Oh, okay, well, sayonara. That's all I got. All right.
You got the next one, please.
And then Puerto Rico, Ms. Dressler, Ms. Wagner.
Sure, we're proposing a 2020 trip to Puerto Rico, and we chose Puerto Rico because it's a country we haven't been to with the students, where we typically go to Spain. And we also have heard from a lot of juniors and seniors that the trips to Spain were expensive, and, they're concerned about college costs and tuition. And this was a more feasible and economical trip through CHA, Cultural Heritage Alliance. We've also traveled with them for a couple decades. I know in 2009, I last traveled with them with the School District of France and Spain. I would be working with the same representative who helped me in 2009. I've been in contact with her as well. The main difference is we don't have a school stay. It would be for 6 nights and 7 days, and it would be, very cultural. It would be interdisciplinary, as we would see luminescent bays and experience science, art. And so we're looking to have this approved and to offer something new for the students where they can go abroad and immerse themselves in the language that they've learned in school.
Additionally, since it is a U.S. territory, students wouldn't necessarily need passports if they are U.S. citizens, so that kind of cuts down on a little bit of a cost and an inconvenience for some families.
Looking for a motion to approve the 2020 trip to Puerto Rico.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Miller?
I think it's adios, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for
All right,
staying.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
China coming up.
I have no clue. Okay. All right, then, item 8E, the 4K program report. Mr. Ryder.
So in our native tongue, good evening. This evening, we want to give you an update of our 4K program that we are ready to launch in September of 2019-20 school year. This evening, I have Mary Shannon, one of our literacy system specialists that works in the district. This is her 3rd year in the district, specifically working at grades K1 with literacy. Mary has an extensive background in early childhood, specifically in the areas of 4K and kindergarten. And in coordination with myself and our core team, Mary's been instrumental in the work you've seen in the report that we submitted to you. So this evening, we're just going to go through a few highlights. Mary's going to talk to some specifics about the student day and the thematic approach to curriculum that we are developing and nearly complete on. And I'll talk to some of the logistics and next steps. So as you remember, back on October 24th, you approved the 4K program after a half a year of study with a diverse group of committee members from the board, community, parents, teachers, and administration. We move forward with the project statement that's outlined in the report, and we're working towards making that project statement a reality, as you can see throughout this board report. Enrollment as of May 1st, when I comprised this, was at 196 Franklin students. So we're looking at, I believe, is hovering around 68 to 70% of what we believe to be the eligible students for 4K in the fall. And the chart breaks down the data suggesting what our current enrollment is per building. Numbers of section and staffing, we're excited that we, as of today, I believe, Ms. Eliason, finalized and we are fully staffed for 4K for next year. We have 4 internal teachers that are going to be pioneers of the program, have become part of our core team district-wide. Our core team consists of Mrs. Shannon, myself, Sarah Edbauer, Sarah Miller, one of our math systems specialists, Mary Hansen, who works in pupil service, and then our 4 internal teachers moving from kindergarten to 4K, Tina Bulow and Lauren Tracy from Countrydale, Christy Ruffing at Ben Franklin, and Kathy Zubke at Pleasant View. So we have our veteran teachers that are will help onboard our new teachers that we are very confident we are going to have a very solid, spectacular 4K teaching team in this inaugural year. So we're excited with knowing who's going to be teaching, what we're going to be teaching. Page 2 of the report outlines the number of sections. As you can see, the total FTE is 6.5. We have full and part-time, as some of our buildings have 1.5 FTE, knowing that we have multiple AM sections. This morning, I received an email that I forwarded to Mr. Milzer and Dr. Miller. We are the only district that applied for the 4K startup grant. They're finalizing the process of that, so one can assume we will receive the full grant allotment, which is exciting, knowing that we'll have those additional funds to make this program a reality. So once that is in process, I'm working with Mrs. Shannon and the team. We've put together a preliminary 4K budget, thinking about the materials and supplies we need, but also outfitting the rooms with new furniture and what's conducive to that 4-year-old setting. Working with each of the site principals at each of the sites and custodial staff, we identified those spaces where 4K will take place and making sure that the learning environment is conducive for our students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Shannon as she talks a little bit about curriculum development and the typical day for a 4-year-old.
So you have that in your packet, and if you look at the typical day, the AM and the PM kind of mirror each other. I can talk about the different parts of the day, so we can think about that. I was thinking about the whole SEL presentations and how it's all, getting kids ready for that social emotional learning, and so much of 4K is all about that. So this is really exciting to listen to. But their entire day has got that social emotional learning woven into it. And so when I think about the schedule, the arrival, it's that transition from home into the classroom and how kids are feeling about themselves as they transition into some work. So, and then they gather for that, it's a welcome ritual, the gathering of their community on the carpeting. So one of the areas that I really enjoy the most, so I just want to talk a little bit about the planning for that play and that inquiry time of day where they take all of their learning and they kind of move it into a way to process through play. And so thinking about lots of different areas of development, and this is just like a small sampling of it, but thinking about fine motor, if they're building things that they're learning about through literacy and math, they get the opportunity to do that. There's also art exploration using lots of different medium to work with. That social communication piece, like how do I invite a friend to play with me? And how do I talk to them when we are playing? And then also thinking about gross motor, like what they're building and how they move their bodies and move around the room. And then, of course, finally, that dramatic play where they get to act out their learning. And that's another really important way that kids process their learning is through that play and that dramatic play where I get to pretend to be something and learn and talk more about that. So then if you jump ahead to the next part, we've kind of broken down, or developed, I should say, this is like a first step into the different units that the children will experience throughout the school year. And we have 5 units that are starting. We're building these, so this is pretty exciting. But the one I want to just look at is like digging down and building up. So you can kind of just think about those parts of the day where children are going to be reading all about different types of jobs like archaeologists and architects, how to build buildings, how to build homes. Taking things apart and putting them back together, all of those pieces are so tied into the math and how we think as learners. So this is where we're at in terms of like building the curriculum a little bit. We have our unit started, and because everything's a thematic approach, everything is woven into their day of learning around these different units.
Thank you. And as far as communication and family engagement, we've outlined that we will be hosting on May 23rd at each building a 4K preview night for parents of students enrolled, as well as prospective parents. We know there's still parents out there that may or may not have enrolled their child. That night will really be our internal teachers and the principal at that building, and myself and Mary will be stationed at our 5 buildings running the same presentation and giving an overview of some of the things that are outlined in this report, talking through some logistics. as well as thinking about how parents can ready their child for the 4K experience through reading to their child, exposing them to some of the social aspects that we'll outline. And this is one of those venues that when we brought the proposal to you last fall, we talked about getting a reimbursement rate at 0.6 instead of a 0.5 because we'll develop community outreach opportunities. This is one of those opportunities. So it's about how we can educate our community around 4-year-old kindergarten, as well as principals will give a tour to parents of the building and just kind of, this is their first experience in our schools. So we're excited for that. Our theme really is that 4K is a gentle start to school. It's not short kindergartners and we're going to hammer them with literacy and math, but to everything Mary just said here, it's about a gentle start to school, understanding who they are in those social emotional aspects of learning and getting along and assimilating outside of, I've only been in my home, or I've only known the kids on my street. I'm coming into a school setting and I understand there's rules and procedures, but also there's people that look like me and don't look like me, and I interact with adults that aren't my parents or my family members, and how we assimilate to those environments through those soft skills. So we'll talk about that with parents as well. And then we're hosting back to school nights separate from the actual school time. So that'll be August 22nd, and the timeline will be throughout the day. We met just before this board meeting. We were meeting with our internal teachers to kind of work out some of these logistics and talked about having specific time slots possibly for parents to sign up to come in and meet their child's teacher with their child and get them used to the environment, school, because it is a big step in their academic career. And then we've been working with Kids Club to secure space within each of our buildings. We have space for Kids Club, but thinking about how a 4-year-old interacting with a 12-year-old is very different. So we're looking at different spaces that are closer to the 4K classrooms for before and then school care as well as the after-school care and pick up procedures and routines and things like that. So there's been a very concerted collaborative effort across multiple departments and stakeholder groups to inform the work as we continue to move forward. So our next steps are really the coordination of the parent preview night. You're all welcome to come to your liaison schools and be members of that preview night. As well as we've back mapped from the very first day of school to October 25th that we started that work. And every month we have specific key checkpoints and people that are involved in the process to make sure that we're extremely successful for not only the launch of 4K, but the continued success throughout the year. Open that to any questions you have.
I know I asked you some questions ahead of time, one of which maybe other board members might want an explanation of check-in with a vote because they might not understand that. But I have one other question first, and I just thought of, there might be parents that want to drive their 4K student to school and pick them up every day, but for the ones that take the school bus, that could be scary for a 4-year-old. So is there any thought about how that's going to be on the school bus?
Yeah, so they'll be seated in the front of the bus for the actual bus ride, just like kindergartners are now. So they won't have to sit in the back with the 5th graders, where they've learned a lot. But then for when we think about drop off and pick up, either a teacher or an educational assistant will meet them at the bus, bring them to the classroom throughout the year, and we'll have specific procedures that are different than the general public that may line up by grade level outside school. So we're working with principals as we put those procedures in place, and that'll all be communicated to parents either at the preview night or at those back to school nights as we understand the difference of a 4-year-old from everyone else.
And I think you're thinking too, like how to get kids ready for that experience too. And I think that the August 22nd date might be an opportunity for maybe a bus is there at the school, and then they can get on the bus and they can sit in their seat and kind of see how things work and talk a little bit about the rules and safety. That's also a great thing to do right away when parents are there. I think it's scary for parents too. It's
Definitely.
And
kids are
that,
probably more pumped and excited.
With that midpoint day, they're the only ones being dropped off and then the morning kids getting on the bus. So it's really those tail ends of the day where the general public of students are on the bus. But to your point, Ms. Evans, there's educating for not just the students, but also parents and faculty.
Yeah. Can you explain check-in with a vote?
Absolutely. So when kids come in, a lot of times they look for their name, and it's a way for them to kind of express an opinion, like, I like chocolate milk and I like white milk. So they just vote, and it's also a way to count things. They're just saying, I like something. It might be, you're going to choose something today, so I'm going to choose this today, so my name goes in there, and it looks just like a, kind of like a graph, sort of. So at the top is their choice, and then they put their name down below. It was just something that, you know, sounded like, oh, we'll check in with this vote. I'm going to vote for my milk today, or I'm going to vote for where I play today, or I vote for the song we're going to start with, so.
And you saw in the curriculum piece, there's AMP time, so we're going to utilize our encore staff to come in and be guest teachers during a specific time period each week or each month around physical education, art, and music. So you might vote to say, today during, if Mr. Blast comes in at Countrydale, I'm going to work on throwing or I'm going to work on kicking. So then children vote to come in, but then it's, now we can utilize that graph in math to talk about the difference. How many more kids want to throw the ball today than want to work on kicking the ball today? So that thematic approach, that it's not isolated of what we have at, across the system of it's math time, it's literacy time, it's play time, but it's all integrated work.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I always thought that tied to building humans was also a little quirky. You meant like people, right?
We were thinking about building kind humans. How do we start with, we're not taking short kindergartners, we're talking about building kids. You're right, we just use the word humans in place there.
Okay.
It was a term that we had heard, and it just feels right.
Okay.
We're building kind humans.
And I'm also wondering, I mean, our 5K now are just kind of, you know, they're older kids, but there might be kids that are coming to 5K that have never been in school either.
Absolutely.
So what happens to be kind of?
Same thing that happens now.
Same.
Yep, and so again, 4K is their choice, so we will hopefully get 100% as we progress, but we have early literacy and math screeners, or early literacy screeners that will take place in 4K per statute as well as in 5K. We use that data as well as observational data to better adjust instructional needs or the social emotional needs that RTI teams then focus on in each building. So
My question really is, how does that first day of kindergarten, if you're 5K and never been in school before? Because there are going to be some kids that, for their first day of school, it's going to be 5K experience, right?
And we still,
that's what
just
they
like,
do now.
yeah,
Just
just
now,
like
yeah.
any grade level, we still go through roles and routines and expectations. Part of registration process, you have to, if you're 5K registering for your first time in Franklin Public Schools, you have to identify, and I believe in one of the updates last fall, I provided information to the board that currently I think it's 50%, 52% of our current 5K population has had some type of 4-year-old experience, which could mean in-home daycare all the way to a formalized 4K program. So then that information we can utilize to better understand the demographic of the students coming into my classroom. And I really got to hit roles and procedures heavy as a teacher the first few weeks because no one's been in 4K or a majority hasn't. Or I know, and we'll be doing transition meetings in the spring with 4K teachers to 5K to talk, just like we do at every grade level, to talk about groups of students and strengths and opportunities for improvement.
And I think in the elementary, correct me if I'm wrong, when there's new students, I think at the beginning of the year, someone does some sort of a welcoming with them where they get their picture taken, and I think then 5K would then be kind of scooped up into that because now there are going to be students that will be new. So.
Okay. I guess the reason I'm also bringing it up is because I know I've been to a PTA meeting earlier in the year at one of my schools, and there was a parent there who was a new parent to the school, and she really felt like she was just kind of going along with everything else and really didn't know the ropes, didn't know really how to figure that out, because nobody was really reaching out to those that were Franklin's a new school for them.
Right.
So, I don't know, I'm just saying that maybe I don't want to miss those people also.
Yeah.
Because you keep referring about, 4K to 5K, but you know the 4K, they're in our system.
Right.
But there's some kids that will move into our community, have never been in school before, and 5K is their first school experience. And how do we make it their first school experience, or they're on their own, just?
Yeah. Currently, we have May days that we have get-to-know-you days. Ms. Abari could probably speak, and Mr. Feckler, to what we do at the elementary, but we have dates this May already that, for 5K, because they're all new to Franklin as well, that we transition parents in as well as students and get them ready. But to your point, Ms. Witkowski, family moves in August 27th, right, and school starts the next week. So how are we onboarding parents and understanding
That's a good way to put it.
At every level, not just kindergarten.
Right.
New seventh grader that came from Muskego.
Onboarding new families.
It almost sounds like something great for the PTAs to take on too, where if, you know, I could, as a principal, call the PTA president, there was kind of like a welcome wagon, like a group of parents who could help those families kind of get oriented to the school, reach out to them, say, hey, I'll meet you at the front door, my kids are older, they know what to do, I'll help you get where you need to be. So I think there's some good ideas that we could put together around that.
Okay. Any other questions on the 4K program report?
I would just like to say the work has been really, really good. And if we weren't one of the last schools in the state of Wisconsin, I would say we should take this on the road and tell people how to start a 4K program, because the work around this has been so well thought out and planned. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your involvement, Ms. Shannon. You're going to do a great job for us. I know it.
It's exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we're on to 9, school board liaison reports. 9A, personnel and policy 4004, employee grievance procedure. This is an action item. So revised policy 4004, Mrs. Elhausen and Dr. Miller are not recommending any changes in the rules, but they've added to the policy language that the board has a right to interpret and apply both the policy and the rules. And so when this policy was adopted, if those of you who were here, remember we carefully discussed the rules at the time because it was brand new. And so at that time, we were still adopting rules, which we don't do anymore. And I think in reading the policy itself, we unintentionally left this out of the policy, but the rules at that time were evolving. Dr. Miller conveyed that to me. So, and the policy and the rules have served the district well. So and its administrative rules is what's being added, and the cross-references are being stricken. And Dr. Miller, do you want to explain that, why that's going on?
It's a little difficult when you cross-reference policies to keep track of where a policy is listed somewhere else, to change the title of the policy. We don't change numbers often, but sometimes we change the title of the policy, so it's a little tricky. So it's really better just not to do the cross-referencing in the policies. So that's why I'd take it out.
And why are we adding and its administrative rules? Is that like putting the rules in the policy, or?
It's saying you have the right to interpret those rules as you make decisions, in addition to, you know, the policy itself.
So basically, we could make this entire policy, make the rules the policy if we wanted to, or we could just say, and its administrative rules, so that we could just constantly change those rules as needed, because otherwise we'd be bringing this policy back a lot if we had to, although the rules haven't changed that much, have they?
No. It's more consistent with how we have our policies set up, so that the administration can change something in the rules, say the timeline changes for some reason. We can change the number of days in the rules without the whole policy coming back to the board. So it's more consistent with what we have.
But the board has control over these rules also on
We
this
have,
policy.
can only interpret them, though, we can't, because we obviously aren't, we're not approving the
Interpret and
rules.
apply.
And apply.
And apply the policy and the rules.
But we're not approving the rules.
No,
The
because
board's
the
not.
rules could potentially change. So as they change, you know, you would be able to apply those changes or interpret those changes in any decisions you're making.
How often do these get used or come up?
Since I've been here, since 2017, once.
Once?
And that, I think when they were initially put in place, we had like 2 grievances. It's very rare.
Very rare. Okay. And is this in any way related to the handbook, or is there a reference to this?
The handbook has to reference the policy, but by statute, you must have a policy around this particular grievance requirements. And so even within the rules, some of these are legally bound in terms of what you're allowed to hear grievances around or required to hear grievances around.
Right.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve revised policy 4004 employee grievance procedure as presented.
So moved.
Okay, so, motion by Mr. Nielsen, second by Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Yes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is item 9B, Board Liaison Role Discussion. And, let's see. I put that in here just because with a new board member, and then I just wanted to go over, you'll see there's a link in there to board roles, and then also your current assignments. And thank you, everybody, for getting those into me. Every board member got either their first or second request. And just looking at your the board role guidelines, not every board member was here when we had committees. I think Mrs. Larson was, I was, Mrs. Witkowski, Mr. Nielsen, I think you
Maybe in the
were.
very
Okay.
beginning, but not much.
So when we went over to just liaison roles, it was determined at that time that we would try to interact with the directors. And part of that was you would come back to the meeting and report to the board what's going on in your area. So we really haven't been doing that as much as we should as a board, so that you keep your fellow board colleagues informed of what's going on in your area. So just as a reminder, if you read what we agreed upon, the board liaison roles, if you could try to make contact with your director 1 or 2 times a year formally, meet with them. And then if the director is having a report like Mr. Cohn and Mr. Reuter did tonight, if you see it's on the agenda, if you could even just make a phone call with them and, try to understand really what's going on that night at the meeting, just so you can, report to the board when you can and do your part as a liaison, it would be a really good thing. In most areas, we have a technology report, we have a building and grounds report, we have the rec department report, but it'd be nice to hear from a board member a little more often in some of those areas, just things that we don't hear all during the year about what's going on. So, is there anyone want to make a comment on that at all, or? If not, then we'll just move on. And Mr. Reuter mentioned going to that 4K meetings as your school liaison. Just to let you know, the school liaisons don't start until next school year, your new school liaison. The ones you have this year are current. Mr. Sprague, you can go to any school you want. Or,
What was Allen's school?
yeah, what was Allen's school?
Did he have Southwood Glen?
He had Ben Franklin, I think.
No, he had Southwood Glen.
He had Southwood Glen?
So you can go to Southwood Glen if you want, or it doesn't matter, just that you go to one if you want to go to one.
Oh, that's right, his grade.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. So, are there any comments on this? Does everyone understand what their role is as a liaison? And if no comments, then we'll move on. To 9C, board liaison reports. Do we have any? Linda?
I guess, was this supposed to be my new assignment? Because it doesn't start till when? Because I am the Southwest.
No, your assignments start now.
Start now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did attend the Southeastern Wisconsin Schools Alliance meeting. Was that yesterday?
WSA Tuesday.
Tuesday. Wednesday. That was
Yesterday.
yesterday. Okay. That's the first meeting, so it's a mix of superintendents and school board members. Seems to be a little bit more superintendents, but that maybe was that meeting. And they're very advocacy focused. That's what we pay them for. And of course, they talked about the state budget. I know we're all following it closely, but essentially, it's considered halftime in the sport of state budgeting, and so it's time for the pep talk and see how we're going to bring this thing home. So they threw around some numbers. I think it was interesting. As far as the Blue Ribbon Commission, I don't know if you're all aware of that. There's a number of proposals that came out of that. They were part of the budget as proposed. They've all been removed. What's going to happen with that? That was discussed. We actually did have a phone call with the state budget director, Brian Pankey. But again, I have to say, I work with the state budget also, and everyone's just saying it's going to be a long time before we get a budget, but who knows? Then I also want to say, we talk about numbers. Remember, we want to focus a little bit more on numbers. And I learned that there's 860,000 school kids in Wisconsin. 860,000. And this particular alliance of 32 districts represents 25% of those kids. So kind of, how much, influence we might have in this area. It's kind of interesting. So that was my first meeting. I think I'll come back.
Thank you, Linda.
Save your seat.
Thank you. And Mr. Sprague is taking on the foundation, and if you didn't let them know, we can let the foundation know that Mr. Sprague is the representative. Thank you.
And we can talk also.
Yeah, I did contact
okay.
Mrs. Cordani.
You did, okay. Thank you. Okay, then item 9D, school and community engagement visits. Do we have any of those for this month? Okay. Then we'll move on to item 10, school board meeting debriefing. Any comments?
I really thought all the reports tonight were very
Weren't they
interesting.
good? They're
Really
very good. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed them very much.
And, yeah. And engaging us was really nice, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous there with the community circle. Felt a little tense, but I got through it, so.
Thank you. Future agenda items. 11A, school improvement plan update will be on May 22nd. And update on board goal number 2 by Mr. Nielsen will be on May 22nd. And Ms. Sellerhausen, I believe. And the 2019-20 staffing report, May 22nd. And just to verify, May 22nd, Mrs. Witkowski excused?
Yes, correct. I'll be gone.
And Mr. Sprague leaving early. Okay. And then the 2019-20 budget presentation, June 19th. Approval of the FSOEA wage increase for 2019-20, June 19th. And Mrs. Witkowski may be late. I'm just trying to keep my calendar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. CISA 1 contract for 2019-20, June 19th. SWSA agreement for 2019-20, June 19th. And a communications update on June 19th. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, just one quick question. On the update on board, sorry, school improvement plan update. So is that the last update then for the year?
From the principals.
I feel bad about missing it.
Well, you'll be able to read the scorecards and
I can read scorecards?
packet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So
Motion by Mr. Nielsen to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:47.